Hello everyone, we're John and Tina Nichols and we're very happy to be with you today for this presentation on the theme of waiting.
What a strange year we're living through in 2020, the strangest of any of us will have experienced. Eventually, we will all have our own stories of lockdown to tell, the highs and the lows. And although it's been hard to stay at home and keeping a safe distance from others, there have definitely been some highs. The cleaner air, hearing the birds sing, and getting much closer to nature, which seem to have been fairly common experiences. What has struck us, though, is it seems to have been a time of unending waiting. We wait for the news each day to hear how many more have died, hoping to hear that things are improving and that the end of lockdown is in sight, waiting to hear when the children can go back to school, when we can return to church, when we can safely go out to the shops or the theatre again.
Or the hairdressers.
It's not knowing how long we will have to endure this situation, which can be stressful and provoke strong emotions.
This got us to thinking about how much of our lives we spend waiting for things, waiting for news, waiting for people or events. Waiting is part of life. We wait in anticipation of a longed-for event, such as the day of our marriage, the birth of a baby, or taking a long-planned holiday. Remember when you first met each other and the early days of your relationship, when you eagerly awaited the next time that you could see each other, when you could talk to each other on the phone, or even receive a letter. Yes, some of us grew up in the days of snail mail and non-mobile phones. We may wait in annoyance or frustration when we have to stay in for a delivery, or someone like a plumber who says sometime between 9 and 5. There are some couples who wait hopefully, but also with anxiety, to see if this month will bring the longed-for pregnancy, or if their hopes will be dashed once again. And we may also at times wait with anxiety and dread. Will a sick loved one recover? Will the test results show there's nothing to worry about? Coronavirus has interrupted the plans of a lot of people. We know from our work running courses of marriage preparation that many of our couples from our spring course have had to postpone their weddings. And that includes our own son and his fiancée, who were due to get married in August. They have a new date now for next year. So although we will have to wait a bit longer and it's rather frustrating, it's still something lovely to look forward to.
We're getting worse at waiting, I think. And perhaps this is because we live in a society based on instant gratification. Are you hungry? Pop something in the microwave. Need some information from someone? Send them a text. You want ever faster broadband, instant downloads of information. Can't afford something? Put it on the credit card so we can have it now. We aren't good either at enjoying the anticipation of events. We rarely enjoy the season of Advent, when we look forward to the celebration of the birth of Jesus, and at home we celebrate the Christmas season at the proper time. Whereas for so many people who have been partying for several weeks beforehand, it's all over on Boxing Day.
There are many stories in the Bible about people who had to wait. Jacob, who had to work for 7 long years for Rachel's father Laban to allow him to marry her, only to find out after the wedding that he'd been given her older sister instead. Laban told him he could marry Rachel as well the following week, but only if he promised to work for him for another 7 years. What an example of love and devotion. Abraham and Sarah waited many years for the son God had promised them. Martha and Mary waited anxiously for several days for Jesus to come and heal Lazarus, as they believed that he could heal him. To their great distress, he died before Jesus got there. But we all know the end to that story, as to everyone's delight and amazement, Jesus restored him to life. It is said that all good things come to those who wait. Has that been our own experience? How do we deal with times of waiting in our own lives? Can our behaviour at these times affect our relationship? We dialogued on this question. How good are you at waiting? Depending on the situation, what emotions does this arouse in you? Are there any instances of waiting that have affected your relationship with your spouse?
One of the worst things is being kept waiting by bureaucracy, and this is a recurrent theme both in fiction and real life, and I've had my fair share. In my letter to Tina, I said that circumstances dictate that sometimes there is no alternative to being patient. But as I get older, I find it increasingly difficult and annoying when I'm kept waiting. Short-term waiting is probably the worst, such as knocking on a front door as a busy GP and a voice saying, "Hang on there, I need to find the key, it's here somewhere." Then there is annoyance and anger because I realise I haven't got much more time before evening surgery starts. And so I have to push down these emotions and present myself as a civil, friendly person. Being on the other end of the system nowadays, that is me sitting in a doctor's waiting room, can cause anxiety, but usually I'm fairly laid back and expect to have to wait, and I'm happy reading my book. If they're running late, I remind myself that I often ran half an hour late in my days as a GP. I also remember occasions before mobile phones when I had to wait for Tina at an agreed rendezvous in Guildford and feeling annoyed when she was late, but the feeling quickly evaporated when she turned up. I know that Tina has done in her time a lot of waiting for me to get home after evening surgery or after weekend house calls. This has certainly put a strain on our relationship at times, but we were determined to work things out together. It took me some time, for instance, to realise how important a well-timed phone call on my mobile was. For example, I've just finished surgery and I'm on my way home now. When our children were teenagers, waiting for them to come home at night could be an anxious time. There was the occasion one night our oldest boy, then about 16, didn't come home at all and couldn't understand why we'd been so worried and were making such a fuss about it. He had stayed at a friend's house, and so what was the problem? He was fine. When I asked him how he would feel if Mum had come to him late at night and said that she was worried because I was very late home and hadn't come back from a medical society meeting, and she hoped I hadn't had an accident, he insisted that was completely different until I challenged him to explain why. In the end, he did get the point and could see why we had been so worried. So that time of anxious waiting for us led him to learn an important lesson.
In my letter to John, I said that I think I'm reasonably good at waiting for things, but waiting for people, less so. I like to be punctual. I think that's important, and so I expect other people to be punctual as well. I don't mind a few minutes late, but half an hour? No, that's definitely not on. If someone is really late, I feel anger and frustration and feeling that they can't really care much about me if they can't be bothered to turn up on time. If I'm kept waiting by someone I don't know well, I will err on the side of politeness and suppress my feelings. But for anyone close to me, or if it was John, I would certainly let them know how I felt. When we married, I knew I was marrying a doctor and I was prepared for what our life would be like, as much as you ever can be. I've had to wait for him on many occasions over the years when evening surgery went on for a long time or when he was on call at the weekends. There were times, though, when this led to us arriving late for something and I would be fuming. However, the times when I felt most annoyed were when I realised his precious time off was being eaten into and I knew how tired he was. So my anger and frustration were more on his behalf and which I felt out of love for him, although he might not have sensed that love at the time. There were many special times of waiting during our life together. The happy, expectant waiting time until each of our children were born, despite the sickness early on and the knowledge of the sleepless nights to follow. It was all something to look forward to. Each one of these was a time of joy for us when our relationship was further cemented in love. There were also times of waiting for exam results for our children and enjoying celebrations of their achievements. And also seeing them get married and become parents themselves. There was one special time of waiting, though, which was hard and painful for both of us. When I was pregnant with our second child, there was great joy at the beginning, which soon turned to anxiety. At 5 months, the waters started to leak. I was admitted into hospital on complete bed rest and not allowed to do anything at all for myself initially, to give things a chance to settle down. I lay in bed for 8 weeks, long weeks of waiting in great anxiety. Anxiety about the pregnancy, anxiety about Michael, who was only 15 months, and feeling very anxious for John, who was a busy junior hospital doctor. Every day that passed gave me a little bit more hope. There was nothing I could do except learn to be patient for the sake of our baby. Sadly, little Anna was born 10 weeks early and only lived for 1 day. It was devastating for both of us. But all that time of patient waiting and anxiety and hope had drawn us very close together, and we discovered a strength we didn't know we had before. After that, we knew we could face anything that life threw at us, as long as we could face it together. We both discovered an inner strength that we didn't know that we had, a strength to be able to buoy each other up in difficult times, which has helped both of us over the years. We went on to have 3 more children and now have 7 grandchildren, and they were all well worth waiting for. We consider ourselves well and truly blessed.
So, we've established that life involves a lot of waiting in lots of different situations, and it's not always negative. We need to understand how we deal with those situations, and if this is anything we can learn from them. Is it true that all good things come to those who wait? Probably the saying is meant as an encouragement to be more patient, and that's something we all need to learn as we wait for the end of lockdown.
Now we have reached the end of this presentation. Thank you for being with us, and we will leave you with our question. How good are you at waiting? Depending on the situation, what emotions does this arouse in you? Are there any instances of waiting that have affected your relationship, positively or negative, with your spouse? How do I feel about my answer?